Hello, I miss Denise so much. Hi, Denise, Ramon.
Hello.
And hello, beautiful people out there, and my lovely boy, Eric. Uh,
Erik says hello, and
I love you.
he says he acts like he just got back from vacation.
I guess he did. But you weren't sick the whole time like I was with a cold, nasty cold. Anyway, all right, we are going to talk about somebody I know absolutely nothing about. But, it came up as being someone who was really desired to bring forward. David Torstad, it's Thorstad, but I'm with my Norwegian. I know Norwegian, so I'm going to say Torstad. David, 1941 to 2021, was an American political activist who co-founded or ran a number of homosexual rights groups following the Stonewall riots in 1969. Do you know anything about the Stonewall riots, Eric or Denise?
Erik says yes, we do. That was when there was a raid in New York. New York and did a lot of damage. Beat up a lot of gay people and stuff like
Oh,
that. And then so that's where they started their protest from there, from the Stonewall back in
oh,
1969 for gay rights and stuff.
it's so stupid that people don't understand when you hurt others, you hurt yourself because we're all full and part of God. We're all
True.
one. Anyway, including as former president of New York's Gay Activist Alliance. He later engaged in pedophilia and pederasty activism with the North American Man Boy Love Association. Oh, I've heard of that. NAMBLA, of which he was a founding member. All right, I got to see what is pederasty. Do you know what it is?
That's where I Googled him about 15 minutes because I didn't know anything about him. And I
You just
just my
like the Norwegian name because you're,
that's the reason why I
yeah,
picked him.
right.
That's the reason why. Well, and also he stuck out like a,
Oh, I see.
but
It's
it's
a sexual relationship between an adult man and a boy.
yes,
Pederasty.
yeah, nasty.
Okay. Well, let's see what these questions are about. And I love questions from the following followers. They're so brilliant. Anyway, what is oh, I guess we should bring him forward first. Hey David, are you around?
Erik says he's here, and and I asked him to please be forthcoming and to speak clear and loud because, like I said, I Googled him about 15 minutes before just to get a face, and I read just a little bit about him, and
Okay.
so yeah, so he's here, and
What does he
he's
look like? How was he dressed?
well, his energy flows, and when I say flows, it's like it's Erik has shown me it's like it's his colors are changing because as he um I don't to for lack of better words makes the wrongs that he did
Yeah.
right, so to speak, his colors will they're going to keep changing, and then they get stable as to the color that his energy is and stuff.
Mm.
But he says he can come down in pants and shoes and a shirt, and he's he seems like a very tall gentleman,
Okay.
and he's I don't know if he was a big guy when he was here, but he's showing me his belt, and that's my symbol to let me know that he's in fit shape.
Okay. Well, here he is. Now I do recognize this guy. Can you
Yeah,
guys?
he looks a little creepy.
Well, that's because you already know what he's all
I
about.
guess
Who
so.
knows? And there's, I guess, him
He
with
says
the
that's a much older picture of him. Okay.
boy. I don't know if you can see it. Anyway.
Mhm.
All right. What is the universal understanding around pedophilia? Is it judged as we judge it on Earth?
So do they judge it over there?
Yeah.
Did you?
I guess what's the universal
Well,
understanding about around and what is its purpose? Maybe that'll help.
he says, of course, it's very inappropriate. It's not okay because you're imposing not values, but you're imposing unhealthy, unwarranted behaviors on somebody, and that's never okay, regardless with what it is, he says. So he said, no, it's not okay. And he says, and then also too, what you're doing is you're, he says, the brain is still developing in that, and now you come in there and you twist it all up. And now he says, of course, this is their plan to come in here, and that is to bring exposure and stuff.
Yeah.
But there are some who, I don't think that was their design plan prior to coming in, but
You mean
he
the
says
victims?
yes, the
Okay.
victims, that wasn't part of their design plan coming in, but whatever their roadmap was on, he's saying, led them down that way to help bring exposure, and not just bring exposure, but so, all of them, he says, were innocent. All of them were innocent.
Hmm. Well, there are some men of legal age that are not equipped to handle something like that either. I mean, I'm going to turn on my lights. I forgot, but go ahead.
Okay. He said, yes, there are men who are legal age, and he's showing me like legal age voting on up. So
Yeah.
it's more, you're still in an impressionable state.
Yeah.
And he says what it is those people are very vulnerable. And so usually he says when those type of people, and he's going to use the word you use, victim, get introduced to this stuff, it's because they're very vulnerable. Something's going on with their life.
Yeah.
Either A, they've already been sexually molested, or they're a runaway, they're hard on their, hard luck. They come from a broken home.
Self-loathing
Yeah, definitely.
for whatever reason.
Mhm.
Okay. What is the sole contract of someone that experienced this in a lifetime? Did we already just do that? Or if Eric, if you want to add more to that, that'd be great. Either David or you.
When you say their sole contract, the person that's
Of someone that
causing
experienced
causing,
this, so I'm thinking about it's probably the victim.
well,
Instead of perpetrating it, they experienced
okay.
it.
Well, Erik says, all of it are experiences to help us in our expansion.
Yeah.
And so that's part of it right there. And then also too, it's like, okay, well, they see like a bonus, like, okay, this is going to help me in my expansion, and we're going to spread light on this, what's going on, and help to bring awareness so that this can finally get more attention. Because Erik says this has been going on for hundreds of years. It's not new.
Yeah. Yeah. Centuries. Wow. All right. Help me and those who may not understand your part in pedophilia and why, David THORSTAD, were you drawn to it? And again, Erik,
Ooh.
you can add anything. Yeah.
Erik says, I'm going to let him talk on this, and then he'll come.
Okay.
So he's taken full ownership, but he's talking from where he was when he was here. He says it's a sickness, and it's about control.
Mm.
He says it's also he says you get a pleasure out of seeing how the young boys respond, and then when he showed me this, because they respond physically, I guess, from touching and stuff. So that right there, he says we get a pleasure from it. And it's, he says, and in our minds, and he's talking about the group that he was in, and I guess it could go further. He says, in our minds, we saw it as that it was an okay thing because the young victims were getting some benefit from it, rather
Were
it
they
be a
all
place.
were they all gay?
The young kids,
Yes. Was it?
no, no,
Okay.
no. But he says no. Some of them weren't even able to decide what it was. You know, it's like some of
Mhm.
them didn't even. Well, and when he says some, I feel like a lot of them hadn't even given it that thought, because he says back when he was doing that behavior, the word gay, faggot, queer, and all of that, he's saying, wasn't as widely spoken about, as open as it is today. So some kids probably wouldn't know anything about that. Um, he does say that, you know, there are some of the kids that were affected by him, and others, they did, I feel he's saying they did commit suicide because they
Yeah,
couldn't stand it.
I thought so.
And, but he says, you know, it's a very unhealed sickness that's within us.
Did you hold them against their will? Many of them? In other words, sex slaves, sex slavery, child slavery?
He said, yes, you could say that. It's almost like, because you have this big guy over this little kid, so to speak, even if they're teenagers, you know, they're still, because the way he shows me, you don't go after people you can't control. So you don't go over, so if you're 5'8", you're not going to go after somebody that's 6 foot, you know, you're going to make sure that they're within the grips that you can hold them, is what he's showing me, for control. So, you know, it's like they are coerced in and given whatever they want, because they know the need these people are wanting, which is food, clothing, and he's telling me there's some drugs involved and stuff like that. So you give them all of this and they think, oh boy, this is fun, this is great, and all of this.
Until
And
it isn't.
then you go in for the kill, he says.
What percent of these young boys were consciously resistant and wanted to get out? I mean, some, of course, were manipulated psychologically, etc., to, like Stockholm syndrome, blah, blah, blah. But what percent were
Um,
like, nope, I don't want this, but I can't get away?
he's showing me like 60% or more.
Now,
Yeah.
is one of the reasons people like you, David, prey on these young boys? Is it because you're trying to reclaim your own innocence? That maybe you've lost your innocence during your own childhood, and to see innocence in another person, um,
He says
or
for
not?
him, no, he wasn't trying to claim his innocence. He is telling me that it was more about seeing what he could conquer. I feel like it's about power, like see what I have, and it's a bragging tool, you know. He says it's like when guys are in high school or
Oh
junior
man,
high school and they go with somebody and it's like a notch in their belt. And when you're hanging around the group he's around, it's a notch in your belt.
yeah,
But they don't go around saying to other people, because I feel like they were around other people who saw the young kids with them. They didn't know that they were there out of that they were there not because how does he say, they didn't know that they were there
against their
against their
will.
will. Yeah, against their will is what he was saying.
So what excuse do they make? Hey, what are you doing with all these little kids?
Well, he says first you made sure if you were out in public that they were more older, like 17, 18, 19, you know, because
Oh,
he's also saying back then too, people really weren't having the awareness like we have today. But then of course the younger kids, you know, you just didn't bring them out and about, or you just kept it in that circle. And he's shown me the younger kids come from like, well, the majority of them, but these younger kids, they come from like broken homes or, and he says it's not that because their homes were broken, it's because at home there was no parental guidance.
Mm. Yeah.
And he says also too, we ran the streets. We didn't have things going on to like we do today, you know.
Mm.
So yeah.
So what are your views now as a spirit on the side in the afterlife regarding what you've done in life and also around the subject of pedophilia?
Well, and Erik's chiming in. Erik says one of the first things that he came to see right away was he abused his authority because people looked up to him, people had a lot of respect for him, and he abused that. And Erik says this is one of the things that he really had to spend time reconciling with. It's not like you, and I've said it before, it's not like you have this dry erase board with all the crap you've done, and then when you transition, it gets all erased. You still have to work through those things and help make those wrongs or right. And it's not all sitting up there drinking coffee and eating powdered sugar donuts, you know, it's work. And
Yeah.
you're constantly, Erik says it's almost like working the rice fields. You're constantly working hard because it's not just you have to, as you're working it, it's like you got to be in the same frequency and energy as these other people who are ready to receive what it is you're helping to heal. And not everybody's there, so he doesn't get to go to page 2 until he gets page 1 done. And sometimes that may not happen for, Erik says, in our time, like maybe 10 years or more.
Mm.
So they has to still work on it.
All right, people, at least in the US, have come to slowly understand and accept the LGBT community. Not all, but most states. Work in progress. Now, at the time you were living, you may have had an interest in being, a pedophile and have certain rights. Don't you think that that would have set the LGBT community back and given a reason for those who hate to spread and use you as an excuse for discriminating against those who are different?
So he says, yes, it's almost like I'm going to fight for what I believe in and do the work in that for what I believe in, but I'm also going to do what else I like to do on the side.
Okay.
And that's, and it's with people who, and he's not making light of this at all, but it's like he's trying to give an example. It's like some police officers are doing their job and everything, but on the side, they're doing illegal things,
Oh, yeah. Ugh.
So
That makes sense.
it's kind of,
Yeah,
it's the same,
activism and
He said he
perpetrator.
abused his power is what it is. He abused his clout. He he really took advantage of that, and he knew that.
Yeah. All right, what can a soul do at this time to help most in the positive evolution of this collective moving forward? I don't know if that's in regards to this subject, probably.
As far as the movement of,
I don't know. Erik, how do you want to answer this?
Erik says he feels like they're talking about the movement of clearing this stuff up with the pedophiles and that whatever it is, the word that they use for him, the older guys and the young boys, is doing what you're doing, having conversations about this, bringing it to light, and then David is saying, let's touch on, the gay rights and stuff. He says, um, um, don't engage with the conversations with people that are against it. You don't need to have an argument with somebody, because arguing with somebody doesn't get you anywhere.
So true. All right, just wanted to know if you were friends with Marsha P. Johnson. And if so, what do you think happened to her? Her death is shrouded in mystery. I have to look that up because I have no idea who that is. Marsha P. Johnson.
I feel like he knew of her.
Okay, Martha. Okay, there she is. Died in 1992. What a spell. All right, let me see. Was an American gay liberation activist, self-identified drag queen. Known as outspoken advocate for gay rights, Johnson was one of the prominent figures in the Stonewall uprising in 1969. Elizabeth, New Jersey. Let me see if it says anything about it.
Because he says he knew of her. He knew of her. Yeah.
According to Rivera, who was this, Kohler believed Johnson committed suicide due to an ever-increasing fragile state, which Rivera herself disputed, claiming she and Johnson had made a pact to cross the River Jordan together. Those who were close to Johnson considered the death suspicious. Many claim that while Johnson did struggle mentally, he really didn't have suicidal ideation. Wigger later said that Johnson may have hallucinated and walked into the river, so she drowned, obviously, or may have jumped into the river to escape harassers, but stated that Johnson was never suicidal. So, Erik, what do you think? Apparently,
well, Erik says definitely it wasn't suicide. It wasn't suicide, and you know, I don't feel like I don't get from either of them that it was an accidental death. I feel like Erik says she did have a lot of harassers, you know, many of them did, you know.
Yeah, it was terrible. Johnson was harassed by a group of thugs who had also robbed people. According to Wicker, a witness saw a neighborhood resident fighting with Johnson on July 4th. During the fight, he used a homophobic slur and later bragged to someone at a bar that he had killed a drag queen named Marsha. So is that what happened? Somebody killed her and dumped her in the river?
Erik says yes.
Oh my God. Okay.
Erik says absolutely. And you know, and Erik says, and even David says, this just shows you how no one further investigated that.
Okay. In this life, what lessons did you come here to learn, Mr. THORSTAD?
He says there are several. You know, one big one was for him was self-love, you know. And he said, I feel like how he says, I did a pretty good job of that, but then I failed. Because you can't behave the way he did and have self-love. Because that's self-loathing. You just can't. And so, but he said what he came here to do, because he was a voice. He came here to help progress our growth, our evolution. He came here to help progress that. But then he took a turn in the wrong way. So it just kind of, yes, he was doing well one way, but then he turned another way. And I also get like there were drugs, like he was involved with drugs, is what I feel like. Yeah.
All right, let's stop part 1 here, and you guys subscribe, hit the notification bell, and please give me a thumbs up so we can help improve our algorithms. Denise Ramon, her information is down below and has probably already been flashed on the screen. I love you, Denise. Thank you, Mr. THORSTAD. I'm not ready to say I love you yet. And I love you, Erik. Stay tuned, people.